Hi, I'm Dr. Wilson. I'm a PhD molecular biologist, and I read the worst book in the world so that you don't have to. And these are my concluding thoughts on my experience reading the book and what I think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an author. This book is actually a masterclass when it comes to science denial. Science deniers tend to do similar things no matter which topic they're talking about. And these strategies have been characterized. They include cherry picking, a reliance on conspiracy theories, the use of fake experts, illogical reasoning, and the reliance on impossible standards for scientific reasoning. If you watch the videos of my review of this book back, I'm sure you can identify many instances where he does each of these things. Before going into reading this book, I knew it was going to be insane, and I had an idea of what to expect. I'm pretty familiar with RFK Jr.'s anti vaccine arguments. I've even debunked several of them in my previous videos. But I really didn't expect him to cram almost all of the COVID misinformation into the first chapter and then jump head first into HIV/AIDS denialism. That was wild to me. I didn't know he was so deep in something that crazy. By the way, all of the ad revenue that this video, along with my last two videos reviewing this book, will make are going to go to Doctors Without Borders. So feel free to share if that's something that you like, or feel free to donate yourself. And if you have watched my previous videos reviewing this book, you'll know that what I found the most disgusting was, in fact, this HIV/AIDS denial. Not just because it's a really bold denial of science, but it's genuinely harmful and it has caused so much death and suffering that didn't have to happen. So, what's Robert's deal? Why does he claim to be a defender of children's health while perpetuating such garbage and obviously harmful misinformation about vaccines and science? Well, there are definitely many ways that someone can come to be like Robert, but I think that one common theme through a majority or a significant number of these cases is trauma. When people experience trauma in their lives, they tend to gravitate towards conspiracy theories if they're vulnerable to that sort of thinking. And Robert, I think, is an example of that. Robert is a guy who has had a very tough life. His uncle was famously assassinated. His father was also famously assassinated. Meanwhile, later in life, he had other tragedies that were less well known to the public. For example, after he divorced his second wife, she hung herself, and he felt some responsibility towards this event. I imagine that was pretty traumatizing, not easy to deal with. But there's another lesser known story where JFK's sister, so Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s aunt, had a lobotomy during her lifetime, and it was disastrous. In the 1940s, lobotomies were unfortunately a common medical procedure. And in case you don't know, a lobotomy is when literally a part of your brain is removed in order to treat what was viewed as personality disorders. For Rosemary Kennedy, this procedure was botched and it left her permanently disabled. Having something like that happen in your family has also got to be traumatic. And that was the medical establishment essentially performing a procedure that shouldn't have been done in the first place and messing it up in a way that permanently harmed a family member. I'm sure that all of these things have had a lasting effect on Robert. How much they have contributed to his current anti vaccine campaigns and science denial, I can't say for sure. But to me, it seems like he might be the kind of person who, after all of that trauma and being such a public figure at the same time, wants to do something that he thinks is going to matter, that is going to be important. And for him, when he first got into this anti vaccine field, it was because a mother of a child who had autism approached him and challenged him to take on this task of fighting what she saw was medical injustice in the form of vaccines causing autism, which they, of course, don't. But turning this anti-vaccine science denial campaign into a noble pursuit that he might feel could redeem his family in a way is something that sounds reasonable. It's either I believe that or I believe that he is a terrible garbage human being, which I might have called him that a couple of times during this book review, but I have to try to look past my emotional reactions to this disinformation and try to understand him as a person at some point. And since I never talked to him, which, by the way, Robert, if you ever watch this, I'm willing to talk to you. But because I've never talked to him, I have no grounds to actually make any judgments as to who he really is and what his motivations are. I can only speculate, but given what we know, that speculation does gravitate towards him being purposefully dishonest. Anyway, if you're thinking of reading this book, my recommendation is don't torture yourself. If one of your goals through reading is to learn something, don't read this book. If for some reason you ever have to choose between reading this book and putting out a campfire with your face, I recommend putting out a campfire with your face. Well, that was cathartic, wasn't it? Now, if you want to learn about science in biology-related fields by reading some books, and you picked up The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and now realize that it deserves to be set on fire and never touched again, fear not, I have suggestions for you if you want to learn real things about science. If you want to learn about polio and how America dealt with the outbreak, how it was funded, and the scientists who eventually created the working vaccines that make us not have to deal with this disease anymore in most countries, then I recommend Polio in American History by Peter M. Oshinsky. If you want to learn about how the world dealt with the 1918 flu pandemic and how it impacted science around the globe and especially in America, then I recommend The Great Influenza by John M. Barry. If you want to learn about where infectious diseases such as Ebola, SARS-1, and HIV come from and how they spill over into humans, then I highly recommend Spillover by David Quammen. If you want to learn more about where infectious diseases come from and want a little bit of a socioeconomic context to it, then I highly recommend The Coming Plague by Laurie Garrett. If you want to learn about cancer and some of science's triumphs, failures, and ongoing challenges with the disease that is literally a part of us, then I highly recommend books like P53, The Gene That Cracked the Cancer Code by Sue Armstrong, The Philadelphia Chromosome by Jessica Wapner, and The Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. If you're not so interested in the details of science, but you're more interested in science as a philosophy and how it is used as a tool by a community to discover truth, then I highly recommend books like Lies, Damned Lies, and Science by Sherry Seathaler, Why Science by James Trefle, The Demon-Haunted World by Carl Sagan, and The Invention of Air by Stephen Johnson. And if you want more of that, but in a conspiracy theory context, then I highly recommend How to Talk to a Science Denier by Lee McIntyre. These books and so many more will help you learn things, something Robert's book doesn't do. Thanks again for watching this book review series. I'm pretty excited to move on to other biology-related disinformation topics in the coming months. So if you want to be around for that, make sure you subscribe so you can catch me next time where I'll be debunking some more funky stuff. See you then.